Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. This one I'm really intrigued by. It came together rather quickly, as things do. I was on a Facebook group in one of the Facebook groups that I will kind of hang out in, at least check out. I forget which one it was. It might have been the solo role-playing game Facebook group. Anyhow, I saw this post about this OFR old freestyle revival that intrigued me in a number of ways. One, it's just the tagline, right? OSR RPG in an FKR style, which I'm still not 100% sure I understand completely what FKR is, but I'm certainly intrigued by it. So that immediately got my attention. And then, of course, talking about and then they mentioned that there was solo rules or some solo mechanisms or something or other in here, solo related stuff inside. Maybe think, okay, this would be good. I know a lot of folks, you folks out there, from what I've heard, are interested in solo play. So it seemed really good. So I reached out to the creator, or at least the poster, and they were kind enough to supply a copy of the rules, I believe, on drive-through, and there's a link to the drive-through on the show notes. I think it's $3.50. $3.50. It's not a huge book. It's about 19 pages. I just got a hold of it this morning, and I haven't pre-read it or anything like that. And of course, I didn't. The creators kind of send it to me, no strings attached. They don't know what I'm going to say. I don't even know what I'm going to say. The usual yada 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 in terms of that stuff. Let's get in there. The text is by I'm gonna have to butcher some names here. Tarcisio Lucas. Hopefully, I didn't mispronounce that too badly. Art is public domain, which is fine by me. This material was inspired by the following games: D&D, Kismet, I'm not familiar with that. Salt, don't know that one either. Swords of the Mist, don't know that one. And Pocket Dragon, also don't know that one. So interesting here, because usually I'm pretty familiar with the inspirations, but in this case, not at all. Let me know, folks out there, if you're in the chat, or of course later on in the comments. Kismet, Salt with 2 A's, Sword of the Mist, Pocket Dragon, those speak to you? Maybe I need to add some more things to my unfortunately ever-growing reading list. Maybe not unfortunate. So what are we going to get in here? Okay, your character, tests, combat, magic, advancement, and then the GM's guide. Oh, wait, I guess the GM's guide is something separate. Then there's a player's guide. There's a quest generator. Always good stuff. Then there's something for got some solo notes. We have an oracle. We have a few oracles. A yes or no oracle, a complex questions oracle, a scene enhancement oracle, and then some notes, I guess a section on customizing tables. So let's get into it. This looks good. Okay, first off, your character. Imagine your character. Choose a class, a race, or origin. Create a brief story for him or her. Think about what he is good at and what he is bad at. Strengths and weaknesses. Write this on a sheet. Oh, don't create wizards, clerics, or similar. Read the chapter on magic to understand how that will work here. All right, so immediately, and I'm guessing this is going to be the FKR thing. The only thing I would like, though, I guess, so the interesting thing here is I am probably not exactly in the core audience. I am in terms of the OSR segment. Hey, OSR, yeah, I'm interested, right? FKR, I'm interested, but I don't know much about it, and the information that I do know, I'm not even totally sure is correct. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm at least partially, perhaps significantly wrong. So having a little bit of like, this is what FKR is, maybe even this is what OSR is, and this is what FKR is, might be helpful, just because if I'm familiar with the FKR side of it, but maybe not so much with the OSR. I don't know what the Venn diagram is on folks who know about both of them. I'm guessing it's pretty substantial, but still be nice. Hey, if you're coming from FKR, this is what you should know about old school revival, Renaissance, whatever. And then, of course, if you're coming from OSR side, this is what you need to know about OSR side. This is what you need to know about FKR. So, but I'm guessing this kind of very loose, no mechanics in there is probably some of the FKR stuff coming in. Terrence says, the first time I've ever heard of FKR. Well, it's this thing called Free Kriegspiel Revolution. Revival? I think R is the same as the OSR. And I'm just going to give a brief thing for folks like Terrence who might not know what FKR is. Very flawed. I'm going to try to talk somebody into coming on the channel and doing more of an FKR deep dive with me so I can really get a better handle on it. But the idea of Free Kriegspiel, was started back with the Prussians, the Prussian military, and I think it was the late 19th century. And the idea was that when they're running war games, or the genesis of it was, you're running a war game. And I don't know much about how war games will run, and these are real, literal war games. You would have a big book with all the rules and all the things as you're judging the performance of the troops. And remember, in this case, we're talking about literal troops. And then when there would be a maneuver on the field, or two maneuvers, right? You might have, if you ever seen something like the Dirty Dozen, when they're playing their war games, you might have a red team and a blue team, these different squads or whatever levels they're doing, and they're doing maneuvers, and then things happen. And you might need to know something. Red team thought they got on B team's flank or did something that was noteworthy, and B team maybe argues, no, you didn't, kind of thing. You might go into these books and you might figure out what the rule is for any number of things. And they figured out that over time, these kinds of rules lookups, and we can all appreciate this playing just tabletop games, take forever. You got to stop everything. Everybody's, stop, halt everybody's movements. Probably the leaders or whoever get together, they're on a hill looking at the book, some big book, and trying to rifle through and say, okay, well, they were allowed to do this. They weren't allowed to do that. This means they get this advantage. This means the other team gets this advantage on this thing. All these different variables to come up with a ruling of, okay, yes, team A, you have this status maybe if you are officially flanking, or team B, red team, blue team, whatever. No, yes, no, right? You're doing all that stuff. So they, at some point, what they did was they decided to have a referee. Referee, right? And this referee was someone who both teams, the leaders of both troops, whatever it is, would acknowledged as a rules expert. Someone you look at and say, yes, this person knows the rules. And therefore, they were empowered to make rulings and on the spot, right, without recourse of having to dig through the book. So instead of having to spend however long, many hours it is to try to figure out all these rulings, you might look up at the referee will say, yep, red team got the flank, whatever, and then you could go on and play. And this would obviously speed up the war games quite a bit. So now the revival of this free Kriegspiel, and this is where my knowledge, so I'm pretty accurate on this part, just the free Kriegspiel element. Prussian military goes from relying on books to this free Kriegspiel approach, where you have a referee who is an acknowledged expert on the rules and everything that's happening to adjudicate the rulings that are happening on the war games, right? That's the free Kriegspiel part. Now, the revival part is taking this and then applying it to role-playing games, or reapplying it. And you can go back and forth on when this might have first came out or originally, but anyway, the now of it is taking this and applying it to now your role-playing games. Where my knowledge falls woefully short is what this actually means. I've never played in a free Kriegspiel game. I've certainly never run one. I've never even watched one. I don't know if it means that there are no rules and they just look to the referee and the referee just says thumbs up, thumbs down, or if it's my understanding of the free Kriegspiel part, where it's not that there are no rules, it's just that you're depending on the rules expert rather than looking up the book. And that would be similar to what you might see in a baseball game or a basketball game or a football game, in which for the 99% of the time, you have a referee, and the referee is a knowledgeable of the rules enough that when they make a call that says pass interference or late hit, whatever, the game doesn't stop and then everyone stop and look up the rules for those things. You just say, okay, ref, reset, do whatever, and go on. But I don't know the mechanics behind the scenes. Maybe there'll be we'll see some, if not an explicit section on what it is, maybe we'll see by the way this game works, we can maybe see what the FKR elements are. Caverna says that the creator of this is Tarcísio. Sorry again for the mispronunciation. He's actually known as one of the most influential people in the Brazilian solo scenario. Okay. And Kismet and so on are also systems created by Brazilians. Oh, well, thank you, Caverna. And great to get some further context. Well, good, really good to know. Just so happened I ran across this on Facebook. So now I feel even better. And here's a sip of, this is just black tea with milk and maybe a little bit of sugar for the working man. So continuing on. Your character has no attributes, nor armor class. There are also no levels. Consult the advancement chapter to see how advancement will be like. Your character has 8 hit points. When it hits 0, it is the end. That's pretty simple. Write down what your character carries with them. Don't worry about money, but be realistic and quote unquote don't overdo it. That's a nice rule of thumb. So the important thing is the only mechanical thing we have so far when you're creating your character is just how many hit points they have. Other than that, nothing at all, right? Also, write if your character owns lands, properties, and if he is well liked in the place where he lives. My character owns the universe. Everybody loves him as a god. Okay, I'm sure that would be. I'm not sure that would be killed under the don't overdo it rule. All right, here we go. Tests. Roll a d20. If the action is considered easy, you succeed on a 10 plus. If the action is considered difficult, you succeed on a 14 plus. 14 or more, 10 or more. If the action is considered nearly impossible, you succeed on an 18 or more. If the character is skilled in something that can help, add a +1, +2, or +3, depending on how good he is at it. If the character is very bad at it, give a penalty of -1 to -3. GM decides arbitrarily. Well, hopefully not like totally arbitrarily, but based on context. If the action can cause physical damage to the character and he failed, we have... Oh, okay, I see. So if it was easy and you fail, that's 1 damage. If it's difficult and you fail, it's 2 damage. And if it's nearly impossible and you fail, that's 3 damage. All right, so right now, right, super easy stuff. I think the only thing that is interesting is by default, an action that's easy, you're only getting about a 50% chance of the time for an easy. So it's just good to know. I always try to think about that. I mean, I'm usually the one that's saying I want to avoid tests at all costs. I mean, tests in terms of rolling the dice. But I definitely think if an easy test is only going to succeed on average about half the time, then I want to avoid making tests if it's at all possible. Combat. Combat is resolved using the same mechanics as actions. Easy enemies are defeated by rolling 10 or more on the die. Difficult enemies are defeated by rolling a 14 or more on the die. Nearly impossible enemies are defeated by rolling an 18 or higher on the die. With each failure, the hero is injured. Oh, easy enemies cause 1 damage, difficult enemies cause 2, and nearly impossible enemies cause 3. So, again, a super easy system. It reminds me a little bit of sort of an OD&D thing of the fantasy combat table, or even the troop, or really all the tables, right? It's 1 roll. You roll. Fantasy combat in particular, I think, because we're not even looking at this point that we haven't talked about armor or anything. This just seemed that it's a flat number. Hey, you're a dragon and I'm a hero. I got to roll a 10 or higher. If I roll 10 or higher, I defeat the dragon. If I don't, I don't. And I better hope that the dragon doesn't roll whatever it rolls. Otherwise, I'm dead. Now, folks, play around with the system a lot to maybe make it a little bit less lethal on a single die roll. But that was kind of the original system in terms of, chainmail anyway. Terrence said, if it's an easy test in your wheelhouse, you only have like a 35% fail chance. Well, yes, if you are skilled in it, something that can help, you do. Let's say if you are skilled, very skilled, you get that +3, then yeah, it helps a lot, right? But I guess it's going to be up to, I guess, the table as to what it means to be, how easy does it get those bonuses. But yeah, so for every +1, you can add a 5% tick on your chance. 5% tick? No, sorry. You can add 5% to your chances. So if you start off at 50%, get +3, you'd end up at 65%, right? 51 + 1 to 55%, +2 to 60%, +3 to 65%. So there you go. Terrence is correct. There you go, 35% chance of failing. But if you didn't have a skill, like if you had to test jumping over a pothole, which you would think, oh, that's easy, it's still only 50%. But maybe that's a situation, like in many things, you just don't roll. Like I would not ask you to roll to jump over a ordinary pothole. But someone else might. All right, so we got combat, super easy. There we go, magic. Magic exists only in magical items and ancient scrolls, often forgotten in deep dungeons and ancient caves. With these objects in their possession, any character can quote-unquote cast magic. It's up to the GM to decide what effect that item will have and how many times that effect can be used before the magic contained within it dissipates. 3 uses seems like a good measure to me. The GM can take any OSR list or spells and magic items as inspiration. Hey, Daniel. Daniel says, it feels like easy is too hard and nearly impossible is too easy. Yep. I definitely think. I mean, look, I mean, the nice thing is so what I like here is it's super simple, right? You could easily just take this and right. If to Daniel's point, maybe I would say, I don't know, I'm throwing a number. Maybe I want to do six or seven. I don't know. I come up with the numbers, or maybe we'd start at 7, let's say, which would be a 65% chance, or maybe even say 6 would be a 70% chance, whatever it is. But then, yeah, maybe nearly impossible. Maybe we just want to do it on a 10% chance at 19, or even just a 5% chance at 20. Daniel says he'd skip easy and make nearly impossible over 20. Yeah, you could do that too, because if it's nearly impossible, maybe that's, or you can even have another rank, which is like, yeah, this is way above. I mean, you can probably play with these a lot. I think so. What I like about this is I like that tests and combat and tests use the same system, so you can easily move these around. Mike Silk says, in life, all chances 50-50 unless it's nearly impossible. I think we can say it's probably not true, Mike, because I don't trip and fall over. Now, granted, that's maybe we'd say 50% of the time when there's a task that requires a roll, that might be closer to it. It really just gets down to your philosophy, right? I'm probably more on to Daniel's point that maybe I would say easy. If you're unskilled, you might roll something, but if it's easy and it's something you're skilled at, then you can just do it. I don't have a 50% chance of failing when I make coffee in the morning. I just don't. I don't succeed all the time to make at least good coffee. I've never failed totally when I go to get up and make an espresso in the morning. I never fail entirely. But sometimes they don't come out so great. But certainly not the majority. Certainly not 50% of the time. I would be considered awful. I mean, I would consider myself awful at making coffee if 50% of the time it just failed. So I don't know, but like I said, it's something that you can work out for yourself, and maybe ultimately you say that, like with lots of things, when you start rolling dice for skills and whatnot, there needs to be context as to why you need to roll for something easy. Otherwise, you just kind of do it. Daniel says he does like the concept of single roll, kind of like PBTA. Yep. Caverna says the coffee machine could break. Yes, it could break, but I've had my coffee machine for many years, and it has yet to break on me. And the Dave says that they failed. Sometimes they forget to put water in the machine or dump the grounds in without a filter because they're not braining yet. I totally get that. I hear you. That stuff has all happened to me. Well, not the machine breaking, but everything else has happened to me, but just not 50% of the time. I mean, not every other day, or since I tend to make coffee twice in a day, it doesn't happen to me once a day that I do a boneheaded move. But yes, I wouldn't have a problem necessarily with doing that. But I think to the point of, and this is, we're going kind of far afield into when to roll for skills. In the morning when I'm making coffee, if I were to goof like that, I just start over or I fix it, right? It's not really a consequential failure. It would only be consequential if I did something so wrong that I lost the coffee that I had in there or something else that prevented me from making coffee at all, which is rare. I put the coffee beans, and there's no filter. All right, well, I'll just get the coffee out, put the filter in, then manage to get the filter back in. All these different things. Most of them you can recover from with fairly little consequence other than maybe spending a little extra time. Or Caverna says, I've been rolling well so far to make your coffee. Yes, knock on wood. I will continue to roll well because you guys in these failure states are now making me afraid to turn on my machine in the morning. RW says that Brazil has a great scene. I've heard that. And of course, a lot of stuff isn't translated into English, so we don't really get to see it. Well, I mean, all this stuff is just making me super glad that I found this post this morning because, I mean, I was aware that Brazil has a very vibrant gaming scene, but I haven't really too much direct contact with it. Caminia says that they might reframe that as a normal test instead of easy. Then I think if something would be considered easy, my instinct as a GM is not require a roll. Yeah. And I think we just have to keep in mind that these rules are extremely light, and you're not trying to spell everything out. So a lot of this is right. He's not giving us any guidance on when to roll or when not to roll. So it's really up to you. But yeah, I would definitely have easy being kind of moderate or normal difficulty or however you want to call it. And yeah, easy might be something that 5+, 6+, and that if you're all skilled, you just let it go. But I'm sure this is the thing with just the kind of I mean, with OSR in general too, right? It's all these rules. It's how does your GM, or how does your GM, if you're a player, if you're a GM, how do you implement it at your table? You get to pick. You can pick. You can decide. Brian Smith says, enemy is defeated in one roll. That's certainly fast resolution. I believe so. I believe it is one roll. But notice it's one roll for you to win, not one roll for them to kill you. So remember, you're starting with 8 hit points, which means you will get 2 rounds against a nearly impossible enemy. So you have 2 chances to kill it. Now, granted, you need an 18 plus, but it's kind of like rolling with advantage. You're going to get to roll with advantage. I mean, assuming there's only one of these enemies, because obviously if there's some combination of these, then you're probably toast. But Terrence is tired of combat slogs. Terrence, I'll have to go back and do a read on them. But OD&D's system, like I play in Daniel's game, or we play a lot of it in the troop combat mode, kind of chainmail based, as opposed to the D&D system as in the alternate combat system, is very quick. It speeds up a lot. There are costs to that, and some of the costs I don't always love. We'll talk about that in another time, but it is fast. It is fast. So magic here, we did go through. Basically, a 3 uses rule, no spells, divine or arcane. It's just scrolls and magic items. Which, was there something? Was it Forbidden Lands? Who else has kind of scrolls? Or is that, no, Morkborg is like that, right? Isn't Morkborg just scrolls and things? I think. Maybe not. Maybe not. R-Dub says real games roll d6. Perhaps. On to advancement. After each completed adventure, the GM should distribute heroic points in the following cases. 1 point if the player's character completed the main mission. 1 point if the player contributed to the creation of a memorable adventure. 1 point if the player had an excellent idea or came up with an inventive solution during the adventure. Each heroic point can be spent to reroll any dice, recover 3 hit points, not applicable if the character reaches zilch, grant a +3 to 1 attack roll or +3 to 1 non-combat skill check. 8 heroic points spent can miraculously save the group, no matter how unlikely it may seem. Players can collectively spend their hero points in this case, with each player donating a certain amount. The Dave says that Index Card RPG has spells and items, so does Mouse Ritter. All right, cool. So the nice thing here is bring your own BYO. That'd be BYOSAMI. Bring your own. There's a typo there. I'll have to let them know. Bring your own spells and magic items. So you can pull whichever one you want out of your hat and use it, whatever sources you have around, mix and match them. If you have that, where did I put it? Got the, something like the Book of Gob handy. You can just chuck those in as scrolls. The advancement's pretty cool. So you're not improving yourself in terms of your abilities, because remember, other than the skills that you wrote down, when it said write down some things you're good at, you don't have any skills, you don't have any attributes, you don't have anything like that. But what you do have is, once you start advancing, you get some points, and then these points you can use to make yourself more survivable in a different way. So this allows you to heal. So it doesn't look like you're ever getting more than those 8 hit points. However, you can recover hit points through using these hero points. You can also amp up an attack roll or a non-combat skill check. And then if you or your party can get together 8, or you have 8 all together, you can miraculously save the group. And I like that you can collectively spend it, which means that this option here is more doable than it might appear, because 8 points seems like a lot when in an adventure. And here, and I think Daniel and I had this discussion a while back as to what does an adventure mean? Are we talking about a full module type adventure, or are we talking about a session? But whatever the time scale, you're only getting 3. But the fact that if you have a party of 3 or 4, so let's say a party of 4, each of you only spending 2 heroic points, means that there's chances are you're going to be able to do some kind of miracle max style save before too long, right? I mean, I guess if you guys all get 2 points after your first adventure, if you don't spend them, you'll have that. So you can kind of bank those away, I suppose, if you wanted to be conservative to save yourselves. R-Dubs is throwing out Strebin Cacciatori di Tesori. which I apologize for that horrible pronunciation. What is R-dubs? What is that? Is that another book we're doing? We should have that as part of OSR October or something, kind of international OSR. I mean, I guess that's very US centric if I'm just going international, but I think at least my channel, most folks are from the States, though I have, which I really appreciate, folks who are abroad from me who come and hang out and hit me to these source books and stuff that are not on the American scenes radar for the most part. I'll have to see if it's got let me make a note of it really quick before I forget. I lose it in the chat, something that happens all too often. All right, I got it down. Okay, GM's guide. GM, yes, among your functions are creating missions and situations that drive the action of the characters. Check. Making the game world respond coherently based on the character's actions. Check. Defining, after a fair analysis of the situation, whether the character's attempted action is easy, difficult, or nearly impossible, and remembering that many things do not require dice rolls if carefully analyzed. So this is an important one. The carefully analyzed is interesting, but many things do not require dice rolls. So there we have a little bit of guidance in terms of you don't need to roll for every little thing. Hey, Hunter Fox. Oh, R-Dub's talking about the Italian book. Translate with Google Translate. Yeah, I'll see. I'll definitely check it out. Okay, so that was defining, right? Defining easy, difficulty, the ease of an action or difficulty of an action. Creating monsters and adversaries and classifying them. Fairly distributing heroic points at the end of each adventure. Though I might, in this case, it seems like with just those categories, I might let players vote on it. Maybe you can't vote for yourself, sort of thing. Being open to player decisions that challenge their preparation, improvise, but do so in a way that maintains the coherence of the scene and the world around it. It's fairly good. Not fairly good. It's good advice. Solid, standard. I wonder though, I think there's another typo here because I think what he means is actually being open to player decisions that challenge your preparation. In other words, and this is the one that I think is really key. It's something that I think a lot of GMs, especially when they're starting out, they fail to do, or they don't mean not to do it, but they do. Assuming that he means what I think he means is that you've created a situation, you've come up with some amazing encounter, situation, scenario, whatever you call it. And then the PCs do something that threatens to or potentially might radically change what you had planned. And this comes up a lot. And often it's but I made up this whole encounter and then the party decided to do something else. Or the party did something which would totally, cancel this encounter. And sometimes the advice is, well, just do it anyway. Or just pretend the guy, you just make it that guy has the spell of not whatever. So that when the party comes in and does that thing, it doesn't work. I don't really like that. But this advice is saying, listen, be open to it. Maybe there's almost always something good that comes out of it. Even if it's just a story. Daniel, for example, telling me about a situation where he was playing a game and the player he gave, was it rock to mud? He gave her a few different spells that she used to amazing effect that totally changed the whole situation in this adventure. And Daniel could have easily done something like, oh, well, this tower is impervious to that rock to mud spell because of X, Y, or Z. You don't know why, player, but it is to keep the thing going. But no, he's like, oh yeah, that would totally take down this tower and all these horrible other things that happened where this encounter was completely undermined by these spells. He didn't. Be open, right? Be open to it. Your party comes up with something. As I always like to say, your encounter, your situation, it's not precious. Let it go. There's going to be something. Even if it's just a story. Even if it's just the story of this thing happening, they'll remember that. It'll be one of those memorable things for you, for them, and there's always something, you can do. R-Dub says, this book is found where? If you check the show notes on the tubes, I'll put the link in the chat, but it should be in the tubes. There is a link to the drive-through, but I will post it. I'm getting it right now on TTRPG. All right. It should hit the chat in a sec. There we go. All right. In case anyone else is curious. So that's the GM guide. Super easy, right? I mean, I think this is all, a lot of this is the free Kriegspiel stuff. I'm not giving a whole lot of guidance. I imagine that this is definitely geared towards folks who are familiar with both OSR and free Kriegspiel. So now for the player side. So as a player, among your functions are act with your character in a manner consistent with the characterization you have decided for them. Makes sense, right? Always maintain a sense of adventure. That's also a good one. You would think that you're playing an adventure game that you would want to have a sense of adventure, but there many times it comes up where the player characters seem to be loath to actually go on an adventure, even though adventuring is what they're supposed to do. Work in favor of the group of adventures to which you belong. Also good, right? Don't your personal little jokes or your little fun, if it starts to supersede the group's fun or work against the group's fun, you shouldn't do it. Think about the group, first. Think about everybody having fun, not just you having fun. Whoops, did this not post? Hold on a second. That's weird. Hold on, let me just hit that button again. Okay. And let's see. Engage in dialogue with the GM if you disagree with any arbitration made. However, remember that the final word will be theirs, which is fine too. I think also, just if you have a really quick disagreement, like, are you sure it works that way? Or I thought I was going to get this thing and whatever. Okay, it's fine. But if it's going to be longer than that, hold off with the arguments. Don't get into it. Just save it for after game. And then wisely use the heroic points that you've earned. Always a good thing to wisely use the resources that one has. Now we get some generators. Give me my generators. Ardub says, boo at disagreeing with the ref. Well, they're not saying you have to. It is okay to disagree with the ref. It is fine. I mean, I think ideally, and again, not to sidetrack too hard, but ideally, the ref is somebody you respect. Like the referees, when I was mentioning the free Kriegspiel, the origins, is that the referee was somebody that everyone acknowledged was a rules expert. And part of that means that when the ref says, yes, this happened, you're not really arguing with them, which I guess would put the modern sports analogies where they tend to argue with the refs a lot, especially basketball. You are saying, like, all right, I trust that you, the referee, knows what's going on, has a better view of it, let more distance than I am, who have maybe in this point of view of my character, whatever, that you've got it covered. So from that point, you should be playing with someone who you believe or you trust to be knowledgeable in everything that's going on with the game. That being said, there are going to be times where you disagree. And I don't think there's anything wrong with disagreeing with the ref. But you just need to, you can, it's almost like that courtroom, right? I'd like to, what do they say? Something like, I'd like to register my objection, or they say something, I want to note it for the record. I want to note it for the record that this is a ridiculous, this is a travish mockery of justice, and that, note it, right? Move on. And you can come back to it later. You can send them some IMs or DMs or something, some kind of M. All right, so we got a question generator. This one is table 1. Something happens, ... I guess these are all D20s. Calling in the super ref. Yeah, can we go to the booth? Can we get a booth review on this? Hunter Fox says that sometimes appreciate when players speak up. Yeah, because we don't always get it right, right? As a referee, we don't always get it right. And I think it would be, I feel like it's those, I definitely appreciate someone who will, who is open to somebody having a little bit. Like I said, it shouldn't take over the game. It shouldn't bring your session to a screeching halt. But sometimes your refs don't get it right. And I don't get it right all the time. And sometimes you are doing something that when you look at it with a little distance from your GM's ref's chair, you say like, oh my gosh, this was kind of cruddy. This wasn't really what I meant. You're right. That did have I did overreact or whatever it is, right? You just can't get carried away. So in the something happens table, we've gotten a sudden eclipse, mysterious plagues. I'm not going to read all 20 of these, but these are all good. These are all, world events. A tyrant conquers neighboring lands and marches onward. I like that. A dragon shows up. There's a prophecy. Elemental imbalances. That's kind of cool. An ancient curse. These are all really good. I like this. I mean, these are big events. You rolling on this, big events. big events. R-Dub says that speaking up is not arguing and undermining, though. But I don't think that's what he's saying. He's not saying, let's see. He says engage in a dialogue. Doesn't mean argue. So he is totally saying the same thing you are. Engaging in a dialogue is much, I would say, is pretty much synonymous with speaking up and not synonymous with arguing and oh, you're poking. Okay. Or joking. Well, poking or joking, you're all good. All right. This is a cool list. These world events. They're big, but I like big. I always like that about, what is it, Broodmother Sky Fortress? It was big. Big. Yes, they do call it chart Dangerous to the World. Yes, take that seriously. But I always like the stuff. I like stuff that shakes up the board. You've got this world that's so meticulous and you got everything thought out and it can feel kind of static. Man, roll on that thing and let some prophecy show up. Let some elemental imbalance just go nuts. Have some tyrant come out of nowhere and just move in next door. Mix it up. So here we are. Characters must. This is an objectives thing. I guess if you needed a mission type stuff, so the characters must investigate the source of the mysterious plagues, or retrieve the stolen cursed artifact, or discover the prophecy's hidden meaning, or rekindle the elemental balance, or retrieve the dragon's stolen hoard. And you can see how, I don't know if they're all one-to-one, but it looks like, which is kind of cool, is you take this list, of things here, and they kind of match up to the things here, which makes sense. You have a problem, and then this problem here creates objectives you fill. But it doesn't happen. But there could be different things. Maybe there's an ancient curse, but you have to find a way to seal the rift in time, and somehow this rift has to do with the curse. But I like it. Hunter is asking where the table is. If you've got the book, it's on page 12. Page 12. If you don't have the book, see my earlier link or see the show notes. It's on drive-through. It's $3.50. Now we have a third table. This one, okay, this is consequences. Meant the dangers to the world. Well, it's here. It's table 1 in the question generator, and in parentheses, if something happens, parenthetically, dangers to the world. And then this other table is the character objectives, which is called the characters must, parenthetically, character objectives. And then the last table is and this is what happens if you fail. And that's on page 14. So 12, 13, and 14 if you're in the book. And then the consequence of failure is, I think, also tied into the something happens, I presume. So we have the eclipse shrouds the world in eternal darkness. That would be big. The cult's deity rises, wreaking havoc. Yeah, that would be pretty big too. The rift in time warps history irreparably. That'd be rough. So these are all really big. So these are for your big capital Q quests. And here we have a note or a little bit. I don't know if it's going to be more than a page. But for those who play solo RPGs, this chapter is for those who are already familiar with the concepts of solo RPGs and want to play OFR, aka Old Free Revival. Is that what the pronunciation was? Because it's Free Kriegspiel, OSR, Old Free Revival. I guess so. Of course, it could be used for a GM when they need to improvise or even just put some spice on the adventure. I'm always down with some spice. What is the connection between the words and the spice? I say words, right? Worms and the spice. Worms. Okay, so we have a yes or no oracle and a D6. We got yes, no, maybe, unclear, highly likely, and unlikely, right? So you're shaking your magic 8 ball. Complex questions. So I guess it would be a complex question. I'm looking at these. I'm thinking. I'm not sure. So this is where an example or an idea of what kind of complex question you're supposed to be asking. Maybe what is the cause of something or other? What is the cause? Terrence says that spicy worms is a food item in Starfield. Oh, that's good. I haven't played Starfield yet. I want to play Starfield. Of course, I want to play Baldur's Gate 3. I'd love to do some streams on them, but I got to figure out when I can do it. I was thinking I might have to do some kind of marathon one time when, I don't know, I've got a weekend to myself or something. I'll have to run some kind of marathon stream where I'll just stay up till all hours. I was thinking if there's one of those charity, because they have those charity like stream marathon kind of things. Maybe I could the next one of those that comes up if it's the right day and situation. Maybe I'll try to do something because I do want to play both of them. And now there's a Star Trek game coming out imminently. I think maybe tomorrow. It seems to be based on. It's by Paradox. It's kind of seems to be based on Stellaris or sort of I don't know, but it looks fun. I want to do that one too. All right, so the complex questions Oracle. I don't know would a complex question be what is the relationship between the worms and the spice? And you might get betrayal and loyalty, or is it more like what is the cause? What is the cause of? I don't know what is the cause of this curse? Family secrets? I'm not sure. I think it'd be nice to get this fleshed out just a bit. Because some of these celestial alignments, moral dilemmas, some of them feel like they're fairly concrete. Well, it's the guardians of the elements. All right, that makes sense. It's the key to immortality. I mean, I guess it's something different. I guess that makes sense. It's the enigmatic elder council. Okay. But then moral dilemmas is a lot more vague. Or celestial alignments. I guess if we're talking about the stars being a certain way, maybe that makes some sense. Might like a little bit, but I think this is just, so I think the idea here is I'm sure someone who's used these more. I've used the ones in, or I've used it in, what's the GM emulator whose name I'm forgetting? I can't remember. I've used their comics question, but it's been a while. So, hey, Magnus. Mythic, yes, Michael Frager. Yep, Mythic, Caverna, yep, Mythic. So, yes, I've used Mythics. I'd probably need to go and see how Mythic does theirs to see if this basically follows the same. But, as you said, this is for someone who's kind of knowledgeable in solo play. And so you probably have a better idea of what questions will get you the best answers from these. Magnus asks, late to the party, what is FKR? Free Kriegspiel Revival, I guess. And just Magnus, in case other folks, there's a bunch of people in here now. So free Kriegspiel was this concept of relying on a referee to adjudicate instead of going through big tomes of rules. And this goes back to Prussian military war games in the 19th century, where they found that they were wasting too much time looking up rulings in the big book of, war game mechanics. So instead they decided to appoint somebody who was acknowledged as a rules expert to referee and adjudicate on the spot. So that's the concept. Get rid of the big book. Use this person who basically is the big book in their brain, big book of rules, and they'll make rulings and adjudicate and do all that stuff. And then you just look to them. They'll tell you good new, and then you can speed things up a lot. So now this rule book, and so now Free Kriegspiel, the revival, revolution, whatever, is bringing that concept forward into modern kind of OSR sort of adventuring, playing. Now I have, as I said before, which you missed, very little to no experience with FKR as a thing. I'm pretty confident in my definition of the Free Kriegspiel part, which I just said, in terms of what it looks like moving it over and layering it onto modern RPGs. This is where my information is woefully short. I just don't know. I don't know a lot about it. I'm going to recruit somebody to come on and explain it to me, who can then also explain it to you, because I don't know very much about it. But that's what I feel like what it is if we think about what the referee in that wargaming was like. And you're right, we have that in, say, the OSR, where rulings are rules. Well, that relies on the GM. But I think this is even taking it a step further. So, for example, which are already covered in this book, you have no attributes. You have nothing. The only mechanical thing that you have on your character sheet is your hit points. And that never changes. So that is, I think, where we're seeing, okay, we're taking somewhat of an OSR type kind of character, but we're wiping away even the few mechanical bits that an OSR character sheet will tend to have, including armor class, including everything else. The only ones you got is hit points, and then everything else we're kind of adjudicating on the fly. Though, and I don't know if this is how all FKR stuff does it, or if they think do differently, but the players are still rolling dice. Because I kind of had in my brain that maybe the players don't even roll dice in FKR. They just say their actions, and the GM maybe rolls dice, or maybe just just makes a decision and says, oh, that makes sense, you hit. No, that doesn't make sense, you miss. But it seems like we do have dice still, but it's a very, 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 very simple dice system. Okay, so scene enhancement oracle. So I guess if you needed something you're looking for, you needed a room feature or something and you couldn't think of anything. So what might there have here? A glowing blue mushroom, a mysterious locket, a hidden trapdoor, an eerie fog, a cursed mirror, an abandoned campsite. Probably want to roll these up beforehand or split them up because you enter in a room and you want a little extra color. The cursed mirror works really great. The petrified forest, maybe not so much. Randall says, check out the FKR collective. Good server, not associated with the old problem people. Is that Randall? Is that a Discord? Is the FKR collective a Discord server? I'm assuming it sounds like it is. So, folks, if you want more FKR action, if you're looking at this, you're thinking like, man, this sounds amazing. Where can I learn more about FKR and its various types? FKR collective is where it's at. Okay, and Randall says, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And then I think we're at the end. So customizing your tables. This is just some, this is nice because just a little bit of, hey, you want to make your own tables or take my tables and riff on them, which you should do for your setting. I mean, the yes or no, maybe not so much, but for the yes or no oracle, he says that you can create a list of possible outcomes, right? Roll a 6-sided die or use a random number generator to choose an outcome and then interpret the result. For the complex questions oracle, you can develop a list of 20 thematic prompts or ideas that can guide your decision-making. When you have a complex question, consult this list for inspiration. Oh, so here's an example. So if your question is, what is the ancient prophecy trying to convey? And you consult the oracle, it might suggest symbolism of nature, hidden clues and artifacts, or divine intervention. Okay, so that makes a whole lot more sense. I almost wonder if that's really how it's best used too. That kind of like looking for an object, or an object in the sense of what is the cause? What is it trying to show me? You're looking for something like that, right? And of course, remember that with these tables, the concept of all these tables is that they're inspirational. They're not giving you a flat out answer. You're supposed to interpret them. And I know what I was just saying about the petrified forest, because that when you put the petrified forest in a room, yes, I can look at it metaphorically. That's kind of hard. Okay, petrified forest, what might that mean in this room? Maybe something comes to you and says, oh, there must be this in the room. Maybe it doesn't. But certainly with those complex questions, you have to take it and interpret it. So it's solo play that's to do that as you're playing. I feel like that's kind of half the fun in solo play, is just thinking about when you ask that question, what you get back, and kind of walking through what the oracle's told you and what that means in this situation. If you're playing at a table and you're using these, and I use them, I've used Mythic when I'm running my home game. I like to use Mythic because it's another thing I can kind of take out of my hands a little bit in terms of responsibility. Is I can say like, oh, something, if a giant crushed the town, I could use, or something else happened, or maybe I just want to say what happened in the town, and I roll the dice. Oh, giants crushed it. Okay, great, right? I didn't do it. That was what the oracle came up with. But they all use, they all require, which I think is a feature, not a bug. They all require interpretation. That also means that in the moment, if you're playing with a group, or using an inspirational table, it might take you a couple minutes to figure something out. It might even take longer. Sometimes you might need to roll again, but pre-rolling for that can kind of help a little bit, just to offset the paralysis of you got some weird answer and you don't know what it means. And then for the scene enhancement oracle, create a list of 20 random elements that can be introduced into a scene. When you feel the need to add something new, or when the GM runs out of ideas, roll a die or randomly select an element from the list, incorporate this element into the scene, building on it to add depth and intrigue. I think maybe for scene, maybe this is something bigger, because these have a very fairy tale-ish quality that maybe would be, I could use this. I think this scene enhancement works best if by scene we're talking about like a hex, an outdoors wilderness situation. Now, one glowing blue mushroom doesn't sound like it, but if it's a field of glowing blue mushrooms, or maybe they're glowing blue mushrooms scattered through a forest, obviously a mysterious locket you could find lying on the floor, a hidden trapdoor. I mean, we all know where the six-fingered man held the Dread Pirate Roberts, aka the Man in Black, aka Wesley. There's a trapdoor in the tree, so it's not like you couldn't have a trapdoor in some interesting areas. Fog, cursed mirrors can show up. Abandoned campsites makes a lot of sense. Talk animals. A glacial ice cave might be interesting if you're in the desert, but you know, you could kind of glacial could just be how it was formed, or ice. Yeah, maybe it was formed by glacial ice, but the ice is no longer there. You know, you got to play around. You got to play around, or roll again, or pick another one if something's not working for you. All right, so this was Old Freestyle. Okay, so it's Old Freestyle Revival. Look, it's short, it's concise. It's not going to introduce you to what OSR means or FKR means. It's definitely coming from the angle of, you know, both of these things and you want to combine them together, or at least you're passively familiar. I would say that in terms of the combination, I feel like it leans a lot more to the FKR than into the OSR part. I think the OSR is more, well, what does it say? He says exactly OSR RPG and FKR style. So I'm wondering what the RPG part is. Maybe it's the kind of like there is a implicit setting here. Folks have mentioned has some shades of Mouse Ritter, and there's no magic. You just use scrolls or magic items, but there's no inherent magic in your body. So maybe the setting and kind of inherent implied setting here is more OSR stuff. But a lot of it is in this, what I can only imagine, because I'm not well versed in it, is the free Kriegspiel style. In that, I mean, look at your character, right? You're going to choose a class. You're going to choose an origin. You're going to create a little story about it. You're going to think about what they're good at, write it down, write some strengths and weaknesses. You're not worried about numbers. You're not worried about classes. You just write some things down. And especially if you're not going to even worry about the magic user classes. You don't have any attributes. You don't have any armor class, no levels. You're just there. I don't even know what this means in terms of wearing magic armor, or not even magic armor, wearing mundane armor. Does that do something? I mean, I would probably rule that maybe if you wore magic armor, maybe you could reduce this damage a little bit, but that's tough because probably easy. You don't want enemies to not be able to damage you. I mean, maybe you do. That's, you know, I mean, I've gotten discuss. You know, Daniel and I have had discussions over the is it a feature or a bug or what, that you can end up in situations and say chainmail or kind of OD&D plus chainmail, that either you just can't hurt an enemy, you just can't, or an enemy just can't hurt you. And these kind of edge cases kind of thing. So maybe that will be a feature. I don't know. So, but maybe also we're talking about the inherent setting here is that armor is not really important. It's more, maybe it's more status. You're able to wear plate mail because you can afford plate mail, which says something about your character more than it actually does too much for you, because you're a hero and you're sort of in this special, this sort of special status anyway, where you're able to fight nearly impossible enemies and actually not just get crushed. So it probably just depends on how you want to look at it. Super simple. Obviously, I haven't run it. I'm not sure if I will. I'm not sure if I'll get to run it, or you know what. But very, very easy adjudication, and the way it works, combat and tests work exactly the same, which I think is kind of cool. We could, you know, you can modify these numbers if you don't love the. I think we had a fairly good discussion on if a 50% chance of failure for easy is warranted, but as was noted later on, he's saying, hey, you know, don't need to roll for everything, which is what, you know, I'd said also too. Weirdly asked if Daniel and I have done any formal collabs lately. Just want to make sure you didn't miss anything. You haven't missed anything. It's been on the table, so to speak. We just haven't gotten around to it. I think what probably will happen, we got to figure out, I got to talk to him about it. But yeah, no, there should be, we've been meaning to do one, but we haven't yet. 50/60 on it. Mike Silk says, what does that mean? 50 out of 60. Are you rating it? Do you have a 60-point scale, or is that 50 or 60% out of 100? What's the 50/60? Out of curiosity, Mr. Silk. But I think I think Daniel and I will get something together soon. We should just record some of the impromptu conversations we've had after game. Oh, 50/50. Yeah, so I think where I would come out on this is, I think the only thing I would like, and it's probably, and look, I don't want to put the burden on this because it really shouldn't be. Me personally, like I said, it would be great if there was a little bit of a section on what is OSR, what is FKR, or almost like, if you're coming from the OSR, here's what you should know about FKR. If you're coming from FKR, here's what you should know about OSR. And what that would do for me is just give me an idea of a little bit more of a context into how they're combining things, or what the concepts. The only part of I kind of understand about the concept is that, hey, OSR RPG in an FKR style. And then as I've been going through here, I've just been sort of guessing, this must be how they do it in FKR, because I know that this is not necessarily how you do it on the OSR side. I don't know if in a pure FKR world, will they not roll dice at all? Because I kind of had that impression, but I don't know. Or would it be different? I don't know. So I don't know if this, for example, how they do these tests is a OSR convention that he's porting over, or if it's an FKR thing and the numbers are supposed to be kind of OSR centric. I'm not sure. I think I like about it is it's super light. It means I can drop this something, I could print out this book, or I really almost have it in my brain, and I could go somewhere I could play, and all we need is a couple of 20-sided dice. We don't even need the other dice. Just give me some 20-sided dice. Dude's asking, what is FKR? Free Kriegspiel Revival. Randall says the players still often roll dice in FKR. Okay, see, that's where I personally need to enhance my FKR knowledge. Dudes, basically FKR has to do with Free Kriegspiel. I've already defined it several times during the stream, so I don't want to bore folks who've been hanging in there with another explanation. But basically, it's the concept of Free Kriegspiel is something from Prussian war games where you rely on a referee instead of rules, or the referee is the rules, where you rely on the referee to be the source of truth for rules. And FKR is basically bringing that into modern role playing. That's the short explanation. You can scroll back in the stream and hit up a longer explanation. Yeah, it's another one of those revolution, revival, ravioli, whatever you want to call it. Okay, but sometimes it is GM facing. I see. Yeah, this is where I need to better educate myself on FKR, because I am interested in it. And I think the OSR style lends itself to an FKR approach, because generally speaking, things are tend to be kind of rules light, and it tends to rely on the GM anyway, that I would be happy playing an OSR game and just kind of having my character's capabilities with some kind of idea of like, yes, you're good at fighting and you're bad at stealth, or you're excellent at magic and you're only okay at skills or something. And then the GM is taking care of all the other stuff if they want to. If they want to. It's just taking that stuff sort of behind the screen and just rolling with like, I have the spell. And that's why I mentioned that something like, right, that like Book of Daub type spells that are really mechanically, there's not really any mechanics anyway or levels, works kind of really good in terms of this, because you don't need them. As in, you don't need the levels, you don't need the mechanics. Randall says, and in solo FKR, you are the world and the rules and the adventures within it. Yep. It makes sense. I think sometimes I like rules. When I was doing my solo play of Dragon, what's it called? The Free League. Why is my brain is mush again? Dragon's Bane. I like having the framework sometimes and the rules, because it helps me work through the procedures and kind of helps me from cheating, in the sense of cheating and not that I necessarily want to like, I'm going to cheat, but just, I think it just happens. It can happen sometimes where you just sort of, it's like sometimes when you're, where I know I had to catch myself a couple times. I was playing like board games by myself, and it was like, I could interpret this in a very positive to me way, or I can interpret it a different way. So not that force myself to like, okay, I'm going to interpret it the hard way. And I like sometimes having that framework. That's why I like the emulators, right? Because then I ask the question and it gives me the answer. I have to figure out how to make the answer work, and it gives me less room to cheat in some ways. Let's see. So this is really cool. Thanks so much to Tarcisio Lucas. I apologize. I'm not sure how to pronounce Tarcisio. That's an awesome name, though. But thanks so much for letting me see it. This was a really good. I would say, I don't know if it makes a great I will say this. for me, it's a really good introduction, a really good invitation to dig deeper into the FKR. I don't know if this book is I would say is like, here's your introduction book right here. And I don't think it's trying to be, so it's not a black mark or a ding on this at all. It's just my first intro to things, but definitely encouraging me to dig deeper, which is always, I think, the sign of a good book, because it makes you you may not understand it fully, but you're like, I want more. And I definitely want more. Fluff the Griffin says it looks very streamlined. It is. It's not, there's no cruft here. There's no fluff. Everything you're getting in here, it's not huge. I'm not saying everything like it's only 20 pages long, but it's everything in here is stuff that you're going to use. And it's said in a very clear, concise way. It's there's nothing flowery about it. They're not trying to convey. I think one of the things that's nice is, I'm sure it's freeing, is because it's a book of just mechanics. Yes, there is a couple things that sort of imply a setting, like the magic bit, but other than that, it's not trying to give you put you in any sort of world setting. So it's not trying to have the language be in a certain way. It's just trying to give you the information, what you need as quick as possible. Yeah, it's $3.50. So, I'm in New York City, and that's less than a cup of coffee, unless I'm going for a bodega and getting a really burnt, frankly, nasty cup of coffee. And even then, at this point, it might be $3.50. Well, no, it's probably not, but still. Yeah, $3.50. And and this is from the Mr. Lucas. The author is from Brazil, which there's a ton of. I'd heard that Brazil is a real hotbed for gaming, particularly like OSR and maybe even FKR type gaming, but we don't get to see a lot of it because not all of it makes it in English. So I appreciate that it is in English. I don't know if there's a version in Portuguese, but really cool that this is out there. Dews says rules can remove your own personal bias or fiat. In my opinion, it's what makes a game. However, this looks really cool. I'm going to look into this for a solo duo game. Yep, Dews. And there's also it's got some oracles, and the thing is, I think too, like the oracles, they're not super. So the quest generator tables I really like a lot. They're big world altering quests, so you don't want to roll on these tables unless you want world altering. You're looking for something really local. You could roll on it, and you just probably want to downgrade things a bit, but really nice quests. And then for the oracles, you get them. You didn't have to have them in there, right? I don't know if they're like, I'm not sure these would replace Mythic for me, because Mythic's got like pages and pages of tables, but you got them there. It's always nice that looking at solo play as a focus here, you get some of them. So if you just had this printed out, you can have it in your pocket and you can just go to. So yeah, really good stuff. Thanks so much. I'm curious. Is this stream, I don't know if it's because I finally got back to scheduling a stream in advance, pulled in a lot more folks. Sometimes I'm wondering if it was I'm curious, if FKR is something folks are really interested in. I know I am, but it's hard to tell sometimes if it's just me or if folks at large are more interested in this kind of FKR style, or just have you seen the word out there and you're wondering what the heck it is? Like some folks have asked in the chat, like, what is FKR? Or if you've heard about it a little bit. I'm certainly in I've heard about it. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not really, I wouldn't say I'm informed. But this is certainly whet my appetite for more. So I think maybe the next thing to do is just find somebody who knows FKR and have them come in and explain it. Explain this to me, will ya? Michael Fraker said they didn't want to miss it because of the topic. Well, hopefully it was worthwhile. I don't think I have anything more to say on it, folks. I hope you dug it. Let me know if you want more FKR stuff. If you are like me and you're intrigued by this whole FKR thing, let me know, because I certainly am. Yeah, I know. I'm going to try to get back in the groove of scheduling it. I know. It's just that I get lost in stuff, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I got to stream, and then I stream. So I'm going to try to get back to scheduling it. I know I fell off the wagon during the summer after I was on I felt like I was on a good groove, and then things just kind of fell off, but I'm going to try to get back to scheduling. And hopefully I can get to a point where I actually schedule days in advance and not just day of, but I'll do what I can. Baby steps, right? Baby steps. Well, that's all I got, folks. Go check it out on drive-thru. It's only $3.50, so I feel like I feel like it's certainly worth a buy in my eyes. But you guys can let me know. I mean, you've got to see the whole thing, so you can follow the stream and make your own decision whether you feel like it's worth that amount or not. But thanks so much, everyone, for joining in. That's all I got, man. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. I will talk to you later. Bye now.